Hello and welcome to World Connect. It's where we bring you news from around the world, from politics, culture, films, art and lots more. The world is no more an exclusive entity and we often refer to it as a global village, and therefore every development that takes place anywhere is as important as domestic affairs. I'm Shreya, and in the next half an hour we'll get you the latest from across the globe and a very interesting video at the end. But first, let's take a look at today's focus. Turkish efforts to calm down tensions with Russia go in vain as Moscow accuses Ankara of trading oil with Islamic State. Turkey Prime Minister advises Moscow to maintain cool. Putin says you will regret more than once downing of my plane. As participants brainstorm an effective climate deal in France, small nations like Kiribati and the Marshall Islands face severe threat from rising sea levels. Draft Paris Pact stresses on voluntary contributions. Christian Kabore, former aide of Burkina Faso's longtime ruler Blaise Compaoré, wins presidency, but his party fails to secure parliament majority. Stability and economic crisis major challenges for the new leader. And how refusing to give her seat to a white man in Montgomery bus made Rosa Parks known as the mother of the civil rights movement in the US. A day after Britain launched airstrikes against the Islamic State in Syria, the German parliament voted to send military support to the US-led coalition fighting the militant group. Now, German MPs approved the plan for a German non-combat role in the region. And earlier, Britain targeted Islamic State following a nod by its lawmakers. Now, British Prime Minister David Cameron had told the parliament that the UK will be a safer place if the country joins its allies in airstrikes on Syria. Cameron said that the strikes will help in bringing political settlement in Syria. Russia and Turkey have been locked in a war of words since last week after a Turkish Air Force jet shot down a Russian warplane near the Syrian-Russian border. Now, despite Turkey claiming that it only protected its territory, an unimpressed Russia warned it of dire consequences.
They
will regret what they did more than once. And we do know what needs to be done.
President Putin used the toughest tone to warn Turkey of consequences for downing Russia's jet. The tension between the two nations heightened further with no sign of easing down. In his State of Nation address, Putin said his country will not forgive Turkey's act of betrayal in its war against terrorism. Tensions further escalated with Moscow accusing Ankara of holding oil trade with Islamic State.
Turkey is the main consumer of the oil stolen from its rightful owners, Syria and Iraq. According to information we have received, the senior political leadership of the country, President Erdogan and his family, are involved in this criminal business.
Ankara, which struck a reconciliatory tone last week, said it was only protecting its border. Turkish Prime Minister addressed Russia as a friend, neighbor and a big partner, urging it to assess the situation calmly. On allegations of oil trade with ISIS, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan hit back at Moscow, saying his country can't have such poor ethics.
Neither Russia nor any other country can accuse Turkey of buying oil from ISIS. Turkey can't have such poor ethics that it buys oil from terrorists. I would offer my resignation if they offered any proof to these accusations.
Russia has suspended preparatory work on the Turkish Stream pipeline project. The Turkish Stream project, announced in late 2014, is designed to take natural gas under the Black Sea from Russia to Turkey, then on to Europe. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he had heard nothing new from his Turkish counterpart. The two leaders were said to have met on the sidelines of a European security meeting in Serbia, but the meeting failed to ease the rift.
Moving on, amid the tussle between developed and developing countries over climate change, there is a group of islands that very few are talking about. Small countries like Kiribati and the Marshall Islands are sinking and face a threat of completely disappearing due to a rising sea level. Now, even though a draft Paris Pact stresses on voluntary emissions cut, it now makes it all the more necessary that the ongoing climate change talks make way for swift action.
When French President François Hollande addressed the Paris Climate Summit this week and said we owe our children a planet protected from catastrophes, he echoed what countries across the globe have been striving to achieve. At a time when the tussle between developed and developing nations over emissions cut overshadows climate change talks, not many are paying attention to the several Caribbean islands that are bearing the brunt of an increasingly changing environment. Small island nations like Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, St. Lucia, Papua New Guinea, and Barbados are directly threatened by the climate change. They are gradually sinking into their oceans. US President Barack Obama even warned that climate refugees in the region might become a cause of concern in the near future.
I'm an island boy. I grew up on an island and understand both the beauty but also the fragility of island ecosystems.
Even though residents of nations like Marshall Islands can immigrate to United States because of their military ties with the country, it is not going to be an easy ride for these sinking islands. The Paris Accord could require developed countries like the US to give billions of dollars to vulnerable nations. But the proposal has been challenged by the local opposition parties. The solution is slow and deterioration is occurring now. Reforms need to be quick, concrete and steady. Several countries are taking steps to deal with climate change. Amid talks on the issue and the launch of an international solar alliance, France inaugurated Europe's biggest solar farm. At 300 megawatt, it will provide electricity to about 3 lakh people. The Himalayan country of Bhutan is taking an advanced approach towards dealing with climate change. The kingdom that many years ago adopted a gross national happiness index focusing on the idea of physical, spiritual and environmental well-being is gradually shifting to using electric cars. In terms of energy, 99% of energy in Bhutan is renewable. Every country has its own set of challenges, and with the Paris talks underway, let's hope that much like the monks in the Buddhist country, the world lays focus on breathing in the differences and working on a shared and sustainable resolution to climate change.
In a major success of China's efforts to internationalize its currency, the International Monetary Fund has included renminbi in its reserve currency basket. The IMF's endorsement marks the most critical change to the basket since its creation almost half a century ago. Take a look at how this step affects not just the Chinese economy but the global scene as well.
The inclusion of Chinese renminbi in IMF's basket is seen as the first step in opening up the world's elite reserve currencies to emerging economies. The decision will be effective from late 2016. The IMF basket defines the value of IMF special drawing rights, a symbolic portion of overall currency reserves. This is the currency mix that countries receive when the IMF disburses financial aid. IMF's basket is based on currencies whose exports of goods and services have the largest value over a 5-year period. Also, currencies that are freely usable are considered for the basket. A freely usable currency is the one which is widely used to make payments for international transactions and widely traded in the principal exchange markets. Currently, there are 4 currencies in IMF's basket: the euro, Japanese yen, pound sterling and US dollar. Renminbi's elevation will mean all these currencies will lose some of their share. With yuan claiming 10.92% share, the dollar will now have 41.73%, euro 30.93%, yen 8.33% and pound 8.09% in IMF's basket.
The basket will now include those 5 currencies, and it will clearly better represent the international community based on those 2 criterion of trade and of freely usable currency.
A currency's status in the world's reserves can mean big gains for the home economy. Experts believe as much as $2 trillion will flow into renminbi assets over the next 10 years. For other countries, it will mean that they can now have their foreign reserves in yuan as well. This will also facilitate and boost trading ties with China. This is even expected to encourage Chinese government to further open up the economy. However, some countries may still hesitate in having large foreign reserves in Chinese currency. Reason being, government's control to decide the value of yuan. However, worries persist and it remains to be seen what steps Beijing will take to allay these apprehensions.
Indonesia has said that faulty equipment was a major factor in the AirAsia plane crash last December that killed all 162 people on board. An official report has said that a technical malfunction took place 4 times during the flight. The report also added that the crew's response contributed to the disaster. Now, following the report, Indonesia announced action plans to strengthen its aviation regulation. Remember, the Airbus A320-200 travelling from Surabaya to Singapore crashed into the Java Sea on 28 December last year. In what is being seen as a major step towards women's emancipation in Saudi Arabia, over 900 women will be fighting municipal elections this year. And not just this, for the first time in the kingdom's history, women will exercise their right to vote.
Skyscraper-filled metropolis, high-end shopping malls and fast food chains, modern architectural facades envelop the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. All this still cannot obscure the deeply conservative society, which has had an abysmal record on the rights of women and their political liberties. The kingdom that has been male-dominated, though, is taking small yet significant steps towards providing more freedom to women. For the first time in the kingdom's history, women will not only vote in the elections but are also running for offices. Over 900 female candidates are set to stand in the 12th of December municipal polls.
We have been waiting to be given this opportunity for the last 10 years. 10 years as ladies to participate in the political and social decision making in the country.
For these women, the bigger challenge is campaigning, as they have to limit the amount of time they spend with men they are not related to. In another major step towards women's emancipation, Saudi Arabia will let widows and divorced women take care of family affairs without the authorization from a man or a court order. The move will lift some of the legal powers men hold over female relatives. In Saudi Arabia, women need to be accompanied by a male guardian every time they leave the house and have to follow a strict dress code. The women's rights movement began in Saudi Arabia in the 1960s. But did not come to prominence until 1990, when a group of 47 women protested the prohibition by driving through the streets of Riyadh. Saudi Arabia is the only country where women are barred from driving. Under the late King Abdullah, the autocratic state carried out some reforms to give women more rights. In 2013, 30 women were appointed as members of the Shura Council, the appointed body that advises government on new laws. The push for women's rights have, though, moved at a glacial pace. But then it is still progressive for a nation strictly governed by Wahhabi interpretation of Sunni Islam.
The FBI is treating the California mass shooting this week as an act of terrorism. The move comes after it emerged that Syed Rizwan Farooq and his wife Tashfeen Malik, who were involved in the mass shooting on Wednesday, had pledged allegiance to the Islamic State in a Facebook post on the day of the attack. Now, 14 people were killed and 21 others were wounded in the shooting. Most of those killed were Farooq's colleagues who worked as an inspector for the county health department. The couple was killed in an ensuing gun battle. There's no age for charity, and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla set an example when they announced that they will be giving away 99% of the Facebook Inc. shares to a philanthropic initiative. Now, Zuckerberg joins the likes of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, billionaires who pledged their wealth to social work. Take a look.
30 is the new 70, and proving this is none other than Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, who will give away 99% of his Facebook Inc. shares to charity. In a letter to their newborn daughter Maxima, Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan said that they will be donating the shares that are currently worth about $45 billion to a philanthropy project focusing on human potential and equality. In the 2,220-word letter that the couple wrote to their first child, issues like health, education and internet access were focused upon before announcing about the Chan-Zuckerberg initiative. It will begin by concentrating on curing disease, digital connectivity, community building and personalized learning. But the 31-year-old Zuckerberg is not the only one who has pledged so much wealth, even though he is one of the youngest. Microsoft Corp co-founder Bill Gates was 45 when he and his wife founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2000. 76-year-old Warren Buffett committed to give away all of his Berkshire Hathaway stock to philanthropic organizations in 2006, at a time when more and more young people are acquiring wealth. This move by Zuckerberg and Chan comes in as what Warren Buffett calls a combination of brains, passion and resources, and one that will certainly set an inspiring example for future generations.
Africa's Burkina Faso welcomed a new dawn with Christian Kabore winning the presidency after a popular uprising ousted the country's longtime ruler Blaise Compaoré. Now Kabore now faces challenges like political stability and a poor economic health of the country.
After a tumultuous year of political unrest, West African nation Burkina Faso elected Roch Marc Christian Kabore as its new president. Kabore succeeds interim President Michel Kofando, who came to power a year ago after a popular uprising overthrew longtime leader Blaise Compaoré. Kabore, a former banker and prime minister, was once a faithful ally of Compaoré. Many believe that during his less than 2-year stay in the opposition, he won hearts of the people by fiercely campaigning against Compaoré's bid to change the constitution and run for another term. It is believed that as Prime Minister, Kabore's main goal for the next 5 years will be to consolidate democracy and dealing with the economic crisis.
We knew Roch Christian Kabore was going to be the next president of Burkina Faso.
We hope that the future president will tackle the people's problems, face on and confront the reality of Burkina Faso.
Former ruler Compaoré had seized power by force and won 4 elections, all of which were disputed. His attempt to remain in power deeply divided Burkina Faso. He ruled the cotton and gold producing nation with a firm grip, but in recent years faced increasing criticism, including from within his own camp and the military. After remaining in power for 27 years, he was forced to flee as protesters were out on the streets demanding his ouster. As violent protests continued, Compaoré resigned and fled in October last year. Burkina's vote was due last month but got delayed by a failed coup in September led by members of the elite presidential guard. The country's elections could serve as an example of democratic transition to other countries in Africa, where veteran rulers in Burundi and Congo Republic changed the constitution this year to pave the way for a fresh term in office.
3 men firebombed a restaurant in Egypt's capital, Cairo, setting off a blaze that killed 16 people and wounded 3 others on Friday. The men had attacked the main entrance of the nightclub, and preliminary investigations indicated that the incident occurred after a dispute between the staff and a group of youngsters over their entry into the building. Now here's a museum that offers an amalgamation of nature and art in a very unique way. Take a look at Brazil's Inhotim that blends the aesthetic with the natural.
Nature and art in a single frame. A kaleidoscope view, the Inhotim Museum, spread across 250 acres in southeast Brazil, is one of the largest open-air museums in the world, where man's creativity blends aesthetically with the beautiful landscape. The lush garden designed by Brazil's renowned artist Roberto Bull Marx is home to one of the world's biggest contemporary art collections. The museum has 500 works by over 100 artists, including prominent names like Matthew Barney and Vic Muniz. 500 floating stainless steel spheres that reflect the magnificent landscape from inside a pond by Japanese artist Yaoi Kusama is a major attraction in the museum.
Inhotim, na verdade,
Inhotim in reality isn't just a museum, and it isn't just a botanical garden. It is an exclusive encounter between art and botanics, which create an unique experience, both in the international art scene and in Brazil.
Tanto no âmbito do cenário internacional como aqui no próprio Brasil.
The massive art complex put together by local mining billionaire Bernardo Paz was founded in 1980s and originally held his private art collection. It was open to the general public only in 2006. Every year, over 300,000 art lovers from all over the world visit the Inyochim, and many return again to be able to see more of the massive art complex.
We have travelled quite a lot, and I can say that I never saw a place like this. I really plan on coming back.
The garden has nearly 5,000 different plant species, including one of the world's most complete collections of palms. The museum also features 23 galleries. With its beautiful exhibits displayed in a natural surrounding, the museum is a true paradise for art lovers.
Gangnam Style singer Psy is back with a new album, Madonna's tour to London, and Coldplay performing the halftime show at the 2016 Super Bowl. Catch this and much more in Showbuzz.
Oscar-winning actress Sandra Bullock announced on Wednesday that she has adopted her second child from a foster care in Louisiana. Speaking to People magazine, the Gravity star said she began fostering Layla about 3 years ago. The actress had adopted her first child, Louise, who is now 5, in 2010. Stars of In the Heart of the Sea walked the blue carpet in London for the movie's European premiere. The film, directed by Oscar winner Ron Howard, is based on Nathaniel Pilbrick's non-fictional book of the same name. South Korean rapper Psy, who catapulted to fame in 2012 with hit song Gangnam Style, released his latest album on Tuesday. The album is heavy on EDM, hip-hop and funk genres, and also includes a song featuring American rapper will.i.am. If reports are anything to go by, British rock band Coldplay will play the halftime show at the 2016 Super Bowl. The annual NFL Super Bowl is the most watched event on US television. The band has some big shoes to fill following Katy Perry's 2015 performance. Award-winning musician Madonna brought her Rebel Heart tour to London on Tuesday. The 57-year-old sang a mix of chart toppers from her 30-year-long career to thousands of fans in the British capital.
She refused to leave her seat not because she was physically tired, but because she was tired of giving in. When 42-year-old Rosa Parks revolted against the bus segregation law between blacks and whites in America's Montgomery, she left behind a legacy of civil rights movement in the country. We get you her story of courage, determination and fearlessness.
1st December 1955. It was just another day for 42-year-old Rosa Parks, who headed home after a long day at work. Tired and exhausted, as she sat on a Montgomery city bus seat, she did something which unfolded events changing lives of many facing discrimination. Living in a city that had segregation law in effect, discriminating between white and black citizens, black seamstress Rosa Parks took a bold step and refused to give her seat to a white man. As Rosa Parks was found guilty of violating segregation law, black people gave a call to boycott Montgomery city buses. The boycott gained momentum and thousands joined in. After being convinced by African-American civil rights leader E.D. Nixon, Rosa Parks agreed to become a plaintiff in a case to challenge the law. According to the law, the front of the buses was reserved for white citizens and the seats behind them for black citizens. Bus drivers also used to ask a black person to give up a seat for a white rider. As the movement grew larger, anger, frustration, and even violence against the boycott could not deter the activists. It continued to gain attention across the globe. On 13th November 1956, the Supreme Court declared as unconstitutional the bus segregation law. Rosa Parks made history by taking a stand alongside other pioneers like Konnect Colvin, a black teenager arrested earlier for law violation. The bus boycott modelled the non-violent protests that defined the era and brought to prominence a lead organizer, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Alabama remembered Parks and other pioneers of the Montgomery bus boycott on its 60th anniversary. US President Barack Obama called for taking forward the principles of Parks, while Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton changed the avatar of her campaign logo. Rosa Parks became known as the mother of the civil rights movement. Parks wrote in her autobiography, "People always say that I did not give up my seat because I was tired. But that isn't true. I was not tired physically. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in." She revolted and emerged as a voice for many who were not courageous enough to stand up.
Well, this brings us to the end of this edition of World Connect. Do send in your feedbacks. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Facebook. But before we leave, let's take you across the world where World AIDS Day was commemorated on December 1st. Now, United Nations has claimed extraordinary progress in the fight against HIV, and even 3 decades after its existence was first recognized, HIV/AIDS continues to remain a challenge to global public health. Take a look and goodbye.